Welcome to Robert Bellissimo at the Movies. This is a YouTube video podcast where we explore all things cinema. I want to welcome back to the show Lucia Grillo, who works in film, television, theater, commercial, print, and voiceover as an actress. Notable screen credits include Spike Lee's Summer of Sam, opposite Mira Sorvino and John Leguizamo, Tony Gilroy's Duplicity with Julia Roberts and Clive Owen, her award-winning film The Cost of Bread opposite Vincent Schiavelli, and Spike Lee's Finlandia vodka commercial. She currently produces and hosts Lucia's Vegan Lifestyle, the only 100% all-around vegan lifestyle show, which you can catch on TV in New York City and also see it on YouTube. Lucia, welcome back. Thanks for joining me again.
Robert, thanks so much for having me again.
It's great to have you. I know it's been a little while, and we did Rocco and His Brothers last time, and now we're venturing into another Italian film. This one lesser known and controversial. The Skin, 1981. After I'll read a brief synopsis. After the Allies liberate Naples in 1943, life for the locals is not much easier, especially for women. Many sacrifice their dignity and morale to survive. This was directed by Liliana Cavani. She wrote the screenplay with Catherine, I think it's Breillat or Breillat. I hope I have that right. It was based on the book by Curzio Malaparte, and it starred the great Marcello Mastroianni, the great Claudia Cardinale, Burt Lancaster, so many great actors, Ken Marshall, Alexandra King. Had you seen this before we decided to review it, Lucia, or was this a first time?
I hadn't, so I'm really
wow.
grateful to you for suggesting it. Yes, thank you. Amazing, devastating film.
Yeah. So did you take to it immediately, or how did you feel about it?
It is so up my alley. One, because I make my own films in southern Italy, in Calabria. Actually, the 20th anniversary of my first film shot in Calabria is coming up, so we'll talk about that another time. But I'm partial to films that are made in the South, and partial to we've talked about before what I call perfect films that are for me politically inclined and beautifully shot and directed and acted. So this was like this is added to my list of perfect films, thanks to you asking me to cover it.
Well, no, I'm happy to hear that, because I'm trying to remember when I first saw it, because I've always really like The Night Porter by Cavani is one of my favorite movies. I absolutely love that film, and I had heard about this, and I can't remember when I first saw it. I didn't initially, and not that I didn't like it, but I found it sort of more shocking in some ways than The Night Porter. And it was just hard to take. And some of the blend with the dark humor sometimes, I think maybe I just wasn't in the right headspace for it, but it sort of overwhelmed me. But then when we agreed to do it, I watched it again. And I think because I had already knew what to expect, I was able to just really lean into it and uh see it for what it's worth, and I liked it so much more. I watched it a couple of times before today, and I think it's a really fantastic film that I think more people should see. But what were some of the takeaways for you? What do you think this film was all about?
Well, there's so much. It's so multi-layered, and the thing that I liked about it is that it encompasses all the brutal aspects of our society, right? Not just during wartime, but things that were still, it was made in the 80s, right? But it's during World War II, but it encompasses so much: patriarchy, commodification of human beings, racism. And, I love the fact that it's called La Pelle, the skin. Yeah. And that the themes are all relative to the value of human flesh.
Right.
In all of its aspects. And the multi-layeredness of it, and then I also think that as a woman who has been conscious of patriarchal norms since I was a teen, or a kid, and watching contemporary films, American contemporary quote unquote women's films that, that, sorry, I'll say this, white American women find, mind blowing. I'm like, that was kind of weak, because this is the kind of films, these are the kinds of stories that we need to be told about the effects of the value of human flesh in a world that commodifies human beings.
Mm,
And you mentioned my vegan TV show, and it also talks about the value of animal flesh,
right.
and not in the way
Oh,
that is
yes.
usually talked about. We're not talking about cows. It's talking about the beloved Occidental was, I mean, sorry, Western Hemisphere man's best friend, right? Which is consumed in some cultures, but in the Western Hemisphere, in Western culture, it is not consumed as food, but it is consumed in other ways, as in vivisection.
Mm,
So I was, even, as a woman, as a human being who's an activist and conscious of the way that human beings are treated in our society, and then as a vegan, this film covers every potential way that human beings and like living sentient beings are exploited and taken advantage of and
mm,
brutalized and commodified.
right. Yeah, well said. Well said. And what's really interesting about the film is that it portrays the the army, the American, the military, who of course uh what we see is when they liberated when Italy, and they started, yeah, exactly, liberated
Yeah.
Naples. They began
Mm-hmm.
in Naples, and then went to Rome. And this is all about when they're in Naples, and at the end they do get to Rome. But here they are portrayed as invaders as opposed to liberators.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the book apparently was only released in 49, not long after, and it was really controversial. It was banned by the Vatican as well. And Malaparte, who basic as I'm sure you know, who basically Mastroianni is the who he plays
Mm-hmm.
in the film. Like, he was there. I mean, he was a fascist, and then he switched alliances, and he was with the Allies. So these are things he saw, and he hated the fact that Napolitane women were sort of, and men, and that they were portrayed even in the media as being, disease carriers, and these, watch out for these prostitutes because they have syphilis and all this stuff, and that the Americans were like these heroes. And what we see in the film is that these women, particularly mostly women, had to do what they needed to do in order to survive and turn to prostitution, and that they were really ultimately exploited and taken advantage of by the Americans, in more ways than one. And I thought that really came through strong. And then we see even the colonel, the female pilot, who's an American, even she gets raped. I mean, it's not even just happening to Italian women. It was like this woman who was like a senator's wife, she was a colonel who flies planes as part of the U.S. Air Force. And
Mm-hmm.
as she gets there, even she gets raped, and it's really, really shocking. So I imagine those things came through for you, that sort of women just being totally conquered and exploited in throughout the
Mm-hmm.
movie.
Yeah, it wasn't a shock. I think the shocking thing is that this film was allowed to be made. You know, there nothing that happens in the film. I think for me, particularly because of my, being highly political since I was a child, not even a teen. Um, being aware, having my eyes open, maybe as the child of immigrants, Italian immigrants, and going to Italy as a child, even when I moved to Italy in early 2001, there was still spray paint on walls, Yankee go home, right?
Oh, wow.
And it's just now that you're starting to see in Italian culture that the embracing of the language of the colonizer, they're starting to use English as cool, even if they don't know how to use phrases. I even see like, film companies or like film festivals, the major ones, using English phrases or American phrases. And I'm like, shouldn't you be Googling or asking someone how to write that or spell this or how to use it in context? Because, one, you're at an Italian festival, or even like filmmakers will write their title in English and their description. And I'm like, is this an English? You're making an English language film? They're like, no, it's in Italian. I'm like, so why are you writing it in English? Especially since there's always been this consciousness of, not, and this kind of not wanting, this resistance to give in to American, Yankee Coca-Cola culture. So it's nothing. It was shocking to me. The more it's more to me, I'm grateful that she made this film, because it really exposes things that I've known, right? I've known since I was young, because I'm a nerd and I read so much and pay attention, that I've known that America was not the savior of Italy, but posed that way. And I'm not a pro-American. I'm not a pro-America in that sense, American government jingoist kind of American. I'm someone who, thinks about humanity and thinks about empire and what is the intention of a country or a government when it goes to another country and purports to be helping it, when it's actually doing something that's strategic for the expansion of empire, right? So this is something that is in my lens when I'm looking at things. So what I love, as I said, is that what she exposes through this theme of the value of the value of flesh, human and others of the animal kingdom. So the themes that I found here, right? There's racism, even layered, right? We even have the Jewish American soldiers, right? He says I won't say it, N-word, this side of the Atlantic has been inside those WAP whores. So he's racist against his fellow soldiers because they're Black. He's racist against the Southern Italian women who, there are like, in Calabria, we call it Calafrica, right? Because there's this influx or this influence of the invasions, the Moorish invasions and all that in the South, right? So we are darker. So this equating, right, this racism across the board from a Jewish man who is also discriminated against, right, in the US, where they immigrated to have somewhere, let's say, safe to live. Everything, the pronunciations of the names, right, the demeaning of a general, and the repetition of the American who insists on saying Mazzolo, however he's saying it, and then after the general repeats his name so many times, he goes, Mr. Whatever your name is. So many things. The negotiating. All right, should I just list go ahead. And then we can, because I have so many notes here. There's so much to talk about here. So the racism, right, against the Black people and the Italians and the Southern Italians, the sexism, then also the discrimination against the women who are dark haired, and hair. To the American men.
That was sort of some of the touches of dark humor, but in a cringy way. But anyways,
it is so crass, and the crassness. Again, I'm grateful for it, because that crassness is the crassness that people are subjected to. But when it's called out, it becomes crass. When it's done to people, we all have to be hush and accept our place in the world, right? Even those of us who fight against it, fight to end white supremacy, fight to end racism and sexism and homophobia and the class system, we have to be nice and polite about it. And we have to ask permission to the white supremacists and the patriarch and the racist and the sexist and the misogynist and the homophobes. We have to be nice. So these things become crass when they're reflected back at us. So right. I love this film. It's very punk rock.
Yeah.
So the class system, women, which comes out, and then also the layers of women, right? Colonel Deborah Wyatt.
Yeah.
It's American as it comes because she's an individual. She's individualistic, right? Which is an American value. Thinking of the individual, American exceptionalism. Then you would think that as a woman, she cares about other women. But on the one hand, she says, I'm not here to help my husband, right. The Sanders campaign, which we're like, yes, right? So I'm here to promote myself. And then you're like, oh, okay, well, she's not here to help the people.
Right.
But something happens at the end, which we should bring up, that is very, let's say, woman power and beautiful prior to the rape that you mentioned. I'll say it now in case we don't get to it later, we get maybe talk about it more, but there's a ritual of women, to honor and give a proper, let's say, a funeral to a young girl.
Oh, yes.
Right, and this beautiful, like, very Southern Italian ritual, very pagan / Catholic ritual that right. that she participates in with the women of Naples. So it's really, really a remarkable film. Women, the class system, homosexuality, this beautiful, beautiful scene with the Neapolitan, that pagan Neapolitan music that sounds, that it has the influences of the Arab invasion of Naples, or like even so much there's so much history in Naples, right? That city is like thousands of years old. So there's let's say a transsexual or a transvestites giving birth to this phallic symbol, this dildo. And how Wyatt, the white American woman, is scandalized, but this kind of beautiful thing about Italian culture, which I noticed as a child, that it was almost this kind of now it's getting more homophobic in Italy, but back when I was a kid going to Italy, you would see men, straight men too, walking arm in arm down the street, having intimate conversations among friends, maybe talking politics, maybe talking family, whatever. But there was not that homophobia. You don't see men walking down the street like that anymore because of homophobia.
Right.
But in this scene, Malaparte, the Italian general, is just kind of, he's amused. He's not scandalized. It's this, normal kind of Italian ritual. The homosexuality is part of this strong Italian, especially Southern Italian, like raw sexuality, right? It's this carnal thing that is just part of life and not embarrassing or taboo as it is in puritanical white America, So sexuality, homosexuality, the vivisection that I brought up, and it covers all of these themes, which are also, right, war really is about, territory and ownership and control and domination. And the way that one dominates is by demeaning and conquering and thinking oneself superior to, and then colonizing and commodifying, the human being, and as we see in this film, the even non-human animal.
Right.
So
right.
a lot. Do you want
Wow.
me to start getting into details of
Well, I
how
wanted to, you said a couple of things I wanted to comment on that I thought was really interesting because it didn't. I think maybe I didn't. Not that I didn't necessarily see it the way you saw it, but I wasn't quite sure what it was about. So the scene where the trans I don't know if he was just in drag or if he was transgender, but give this sort of this show where he's sort of giving birth to this, like, it's well, I mean, it's a show, and then it's like this doll with this big dildo and this, this really, I love that song that they were playing and everyone's having a good time. I I I I just thought maybe she was showing that because, like, almost as a way to say that what these people have gone through is making them go kind of insane. Because Malaparte seems to be bringing Deborah there to sort of show her what's actually happening. So I thought he was
Mhm,
showing that to, like, say, look at how crazy people have become, and then we
mhm,
also see that he shows her, like, the Moroccans buying children from women, these
mhm,
mothers who are so desperate and they sell their children into prostitution. And you see, like, she gets really angry at them, rightfully so. But that's
mhm.
interesting that you saw. I mean, you probably know more about the culture than I do. Even though I'm Italian Canadian, but I must admit I've actually still haven't even been there. I mean, it's shocking to me. I
What?
know.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
no, we can't talk.
Yeah.
No, you have got to
Yeah, I
go.
know. I know. I know.
Got to go, especially because you do all of this,
Yeah, I
We'll give
know.
you a
I
whole
just lost some subscribers now.
no, no, no. No, you've got to share this, keep the subscribers coming because what Robert's doing is amazing.
Yeah, but
But it's
it's interesting. I never maybe you know more about it than I do, because I was curious why you saw that as sort of more of like a celebratory scene, because that's interesting.
there's so many things, and there can be so many interpretations. But one, Malaparte says to her, to understand a people, you have to start from the bottom. And he doesn't mean like he's not
Oh, I
demeaning
see.
them,
I see.
He, or maybe he is, I don't know, because he's complex as well.
Yeah.
He's a complex character. But so he brings her to the quote unquote bottom, right? They descend the steps, they go into like the bowels of Naples, right? And that's where people, the underground is where people can express themselves. And also,
Oh, interesting. Interesting. Yeah, I
yeah,
didn't think of that. I didn't think of that.
and it's beautiful because it's performance art, not only in itself in that scene, but the song itself,
Yeah.
which I posted. After watching the movie and doing research in preparation for this talk that we're having right now, I dug and dug to find that song, and it was actually by a folk group of CCCP, an Italian, Southern Italian folk group,
Oh,
and there's
wow.
actually a staging of it. I'll send you the video. I
Yeah,
posted it
please do.
to my Instagram and to my Facebook, and I left it public, and people were commenting, people that actually had been at that performance. So it was beautiful that Cavani decided to incorporate that contemporary piece that's singing this like traditional Neapolitan song. And it's a beautiful song about washerwomen, gaining their power. It's a mate over their oppressor.
Oh, wow,
So
wow.
the scene is
I
really
had it in my
symbolic.
head for the longest time, and it's really
Amazing.
catchy.
It really is. I played that video. So I took like 2 hours to record it and post it.
Oh, wow.
Because it was like art is so valuable,
Yeah.
and then when we can share it, that I was able to find it and see that thanks to you exposing me to this film, to find that and see that, and then be in contact with other people talking about it and sharing the joy of art and the joy of expression, and and experience. That's also too, like, you don't have to be of a people, and you don't have to have been to a place to understand it objectively
Right,
or
of
what's
course.
going on, right?
Of
You're an
course.
expert in cinema. You don't need to be, I think when we have subjective experiences, it can give us a different perspective, but subjective experience is not necessarily objective or conducive to,
Right.
let's say, finding. It's not the what's the definitive, right? It's not definitive of reality, subjective experience. It's personal reality, but it's not objective reality. So you cannot have been to a country and then be an expert in the cinema of that country, which you are. So, but
Thank
you
God.
do need to get to
But I do need to get there.
you do need to
Yeah.
get there just because.
Yeah, no, no, of course. Yeah,
So,
no, no. I certainly will. But that's really wow, that really makes me look at that in such a totally different way, which I did not, but now that you put it that way, I can certainly see it. And the other scene that you touched on about that funeral for that young girl that they do, that see
mhm,
you put that in a way which I also didn't see, but now I can see it because when they put her on the table and dressed her up like for a to look like ready for a funeral, it to me it resembled what we saw earlier, which was that big fish that they had at that feast where everyone thought it was a baby, a cooked baby, and you actually don't know whether it was a cooked baby or not. And
mhm.
because it resembled that, I thought, are they going to like potentially eat her? Because there are these
Oh,
references to cannibalism in the film,
yeah.
and I just thought
Mhm.
the image it really reminded me of that fish. But that's maybe it's a mixed. You could see it in a few different ways, not just in one static way. But
Yeah. So
that's
many.
interesting to me. I don't know if that popped out to
Yeah,
you.
it
That
totally did because she's
yeah,
placed on the dining table. One where the
exactly,
wealthy
yeah,
people are just having their meal,
right,
right? And also that's a result of the empire, right? And a war for empire, right? That's
right,
really what World War II was about. It was not about human rights, right?
right,
So World War II, war for empire, and she is the flesh, right? Again,
yeah,
that's the flesh, la pelle, the skin
yes,
is the title of the film. She is that meal served, right?
yes.
And then also the value of the virgin, right,
Oh,
which we
right,
also see in the young woman that Wyatt quote unquote falls in love with, and how she's treated as a commodity, by her own father,
oh yeah, God,
right, who
yeah.
kind of who exploits her as the Virgin of Naples, and all of the soldiers who line up
Oh, yeah.
thinking that they're going to be able to rape her
Right.
and be able to rape her for $1.
Right.
They line up, and then he himself violates her, right,
Oh,
to
yeah.
prove her purity and her worth, the
Yeah.
worth of her flesh as his potential bride to bring back to America.
Yes.
Which even at the end, right? I'm going to come back. He
Yeah.
says to General Mark, I'm going to come back and get her. And he goes, and the general goes, yeah, 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 yeah. You're
Right.
going to come back. Who knows?
Right. This is
Which
this is
happened
Jimmy
often.
Jimmy Wren, right? The
Hmm.
soldier who falls for
Yeah,
Maria.
yeah, yeah.
The
Oh, sorry, Brett, not Wyatt. Yes, exactly.
yeah.
Um, and which also was a reality of what happened to women during World War II,
Yeah.
right? Or in general during wars, but it was a reality of that. There's so much here, so much here. Let me see what
Well,
there was
the
something.
title alone is so perfect. I mean, as you already said, the skin, because the skin is something that they use in order to survive, women
Mhm.
becoming prostitutes, but then also they were like the suggestion is to be devoured in more ways than one. I mean, in rape, and then potentially again these references to cannibalism, which
Mhm.
occasionally were funny, like when Mastroianni
Yeah,
makes everyone think that he ate people when when the American soldiers are
but then they
complaining
also
about
leave
the
it
food.
vague, right?
What was that? Sorry.
So he leaves it kind of vague, right? They were like, "I'm glad you were just joking about that," or and I think he says something to the effect of, "Or was I?" But even symbolically, right?
Yeah.
One of them says, I don't know if it's is it Colonel Mark? He says something to the effect of, I'll tell you now. There's an American colonel at the table. He says something about not wanting to eat the food of the poor, with no offense to the general who
Oh,
then
right, right,
shows
right.
them, so it's kind of all related, right? The poor don't have the food to eat. You are, you, the colonizer, are ultra privileged. Even for Wyatt, right?
Yeah.
They order the baby, even check the aquarium, he says. But
Yes.
then also there, right? There's so much. You say it looks like a baby, it could be a young woman. Will they eat it? For me as a vegan, I'm like, to me, it's the equivalent of a
Right.
baby. That fish is as valuable. That fish, consider it's, whether it's conscious like us or not, considers its life as valuable as we do our own, right?
Right.
But then the devaluing of life, and then holding certain people, in a position of privilege. Also, that Wyatt is horrified of the sale of children by their own mothers, who are put in this position by
Mm,
the American empire, right? The empire is at war. The Americans who let Hitler do what he was doing because of business, right?
yeah.
Ford was building cars there. There was a business thing in America. The American government permitted Hitler to do this, knowing what he was doing,
Yeah.
permitted him to do that to the Jewish people and others. Um, but she's okay with white American men and others purchasing women, and also possibly the children. I mean, the Moroccans, who are the Moroccans selling the children to?
Right. Well, yeah. Yeah.
They're not only selling them to their own soldiers, their own men,
Yeah.
you know. I'm
Yeah.
sure they have a market, right? So Wyatt is scandalized by the selling of children, and scandalized by that a woman would do that to her child, but she's not scandalized by men purchasing her fellow women,
Right.
right?
That's a
It's
good
really
point.
the
Yeah.
hierarchy. But then sadly at the end, she is brought down to the level we don't want that to happen.
Right. Of
She's
course.
brought down, she's reduced because of racism, and because, right, she's thought of as a blonde, someone who bleached her hair blonde, an Italian prostitute.
Right.
And all women are thought of as prostitutes. There's a scene where a woman is in the town square, and the American soldier, jumps out of his Jeep and asks her how much, and she's offended, and he's like, he says something
Oh,
racist
right.
against Italians.
Yeah.
So it's like, this is kind of, it's not only during that situation, but women are thought of in general, whether you're a nun, even if you're a nun, you're the property of the patriarchy.
Yeah.
So any woman is fair game,
Yeah.
at any time.
No.
So
Yeah. No. Very, very, very well said. And the woman, Alexandra King, who they got to play Deborah, she was
uh,
never in a film before and never in a film again. And I couldn't find out anything about this woman. She had such a distinctive look to me.
mhm.
She looked like a cross between, and I mean this as a compliment, Michelle Pfeiffer and David Bowie or something. Like she
Oh
had
wow,
this
yeah,
really,
yeah,
or even
yeah,
Verna Lisi, the
yeah,
Italian
yeah.
actor. I mean, she had such really beautiful, really distinctive features. And the only thing I could find of her is that she's on Instagram. Yeah, she has her own personal like account.
Oh
But
my God.
I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened. What or how
Oh, I
she
gotta
got into
ask
this
her.
film. I couldn't find anything out. I don't know if you did, but
No, I didn't even look, because I was just mainly focusing, I even have notes on the screenwriting, right? Catherine Breillat is one of the most important French filmmakers. And she also, these are the kinds of films that she writes, films
yeah, I
to
wasn't
kind
as
of,
familiar with her. I'll have to look her up.
yes, see, and when we ask people, and we're all guilty of it, when we ask people to name the greatest filmmakers of all time, admittedly, we have the list tip of our tongues, right? And this is one of the reasons why you asked me to choose between this and another film, and I chose, because we need to be talking about the women
Yeah, of
filmmakers,
course.
especially when they're making films like this.
Yeah.
These are just, I mean, these are the kinds of films that I want to make. I have a drama series in development now based on a book, and I
Oh,
want it to have this kind of grit. Did I not tell you this? Yeah,
no,
it's a
no.
book. Oh, okay. So I've had it for a long time now, but my vegan series is taking a lot of time. It's a book that was written by a sister Calabrian New Yorker who died last year at the age of 95.
Oh,
And she and her family, her daughter gave me the rights to the book. I own them for a screen, and it takes place. It starts in Calabria, where which is why I became a filmmaker, is to tell stories in Calabria, and then it comes here, tells the story of women through 5 generations of women
oh,
of
wow.
one Italian immigrant family, and then it's intercontinental. So when we tell women's stories, I think it's important to include the grit. There's a scene where Malaparte is walking with Ren, right? The Italian general who was the author of the book is walking with a young American white soldier in the streets of Naples, and there's a scene where it's such a poignant scene. There's so many things that happen that are actually we find them in American culture today. So they're walking after going to or maybe before. Yeah, it's on their way to buy the blonde merkins. They're walking down this kind of scalinata, this stairway out, this outdoor stairway in Naples, and there are prostitutes or women who were forced to prostitute themselves sitting along the wall of this stairway. And they're catcalling to the American soldiers, and they're flirting with them, trying to get them as clients, we'll say. And then they they open their legs right, to show their wares, let's say. And the opening of the legs is both literal and figurative, right? So Malaparte says to him, where is it? Hold on a second. Let me see. Sorry, I had it
No,
here.
it's okay. Go
There's so
ahead.
many notes. I have so many notes. The women open their legs, right, to show their vaginas, to show their wares to the soldiers, and the soldiers are all like marveling, right, and then Malaparte, even though he also is sexist, right, he's like, as we said, pretty complex.
Yeah.
He says to Ren, "You think those men feel like heroes when the women of Naples open their legs for them?" And Jimmy says, "Well, they probably feel like me. I feel like I'm seeing Europe." So it's so heartbreaking.
Mm.
I get so emotional because the South, is just such this rich place, and then to be raped like this, right?
Oh,
It's
yeah.
it's the literal and the figurative, right? The literal, that the women were reduced and forced to prostitute themselves. Women in general, right? Women who are prostitutes now. There's a very small percentage that actually enjoys it. If
Right.
women feel empowered by it, it's always within the parameters of patriarchy and capitalism. So these women are opening their legs to show their wares, opening them to America, to the American men, to the conquerors. But then they're also opening the legs of Naples, southern
Right.
Italy, the legs of Italy, the
Mm.
rape of Europa, right? The famous sculpture. There, it's the opening up of this country, of a country, to be raped by the colonizers, and it's just, there's so much in this film
Yeah. Oh,
that,
I know.
sometimes with innuendo and almost suddenly, but just it hits you in the face
Oh,
with
God, yeah.
the crassness of reality.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
and
that's
then,
why when I first saw it, I had a hard time with it. And
uh-huh,
then it was only, it's hard to just watch once because you have to
yeah,
watch it a few times. But what I liked about Malaparte, who Mastroianni plays, is that he's being often so sarcastic and kidding around so much
Right.
And you really get the impression that this is a way to cope. It's a coping mechanism because of
Yeah.
everything that he's experiencing and witnessing. And if to me, it really wasn't until the end that you see that mask sort of break as he witnesses that Italian man getting just run over by that tank. And just like it just splatters everywhere. I mean, I'd really would love to know how they did that. It looked really real.
I know.
And no one
Yeah.
seems to really care. It's ironic because they're cheering that America's there in Rome, and then with their
Mhm.
American flag, and then boom, he
Yeah.
gets run over. Thank God the child he was holding didn't get run over.
Right.
At
Right.
least
Yeah.
she didn't do that. I was kind of glad that
Yeah.
Cavani didn't also
Yeah.
kill the child. But
Yeah.
and you see, and the camera, she really lingers on just this like blood and
Yeah.
guts everywhere. And then you see, I mean, Mastroianni is such a great actor. He could do so much with just the littlest of expressions. And you see
Yeah.
that he is absolutely horrified. And it really just ends there. But I thought, he's so good because he could be really dramatic, but also could be very funny. He's got this really great, simple sense of humor and sarcasm that just I thought he was wonderful in it. I mean, what was your impression of that role and
Yeah.
Mastroianni?
I think two things. I think he was a character. He was his own character. Mastroianni, right? There's no contesting that he's one of the greatest actors ever in the
Yeah,
history
oh
of
yeah.
cinema worldwide. But I think Malaparte is both his own a character, and I think of him. He's also kind of a guide, right? Like
Yes.
Plutarch in Dante's Inferno, the Divine Comedy. So he's the guide. That's why I think he goes right. He goes from, like, let's say, the paradise of Naples, right? Because where his house is just like
Oh
breathtaking
yeah.
and
Yeah.
so of privilege. And then he descends, right? And he brings Wyatt there. He brings Ren. He's part of it, right? So I think of him kind of as this guide, and in that sarcasm or that like cheekiness, that kind of puck kind of, you know, ishness. He's calling attention to and asking, asking for critical thinking. The people, those poor people that think they're saved by the Americans who throw candy at them.
Right.
This happens now. It's disgusting. But they have never had the opportunity for education or to think critically.
Right.
So of course they're shocked by yet another murder. But then again, right, as they say in the beginning of the film, one of the first scenes is loading corpses in funeral boxes, and they say in the South, death is democratic.
Oh right.
It doesn't matter that it's war. Typhoid, famine, infections kill people every day. And, it's just they're sadly used to it, which happens in our class system, that people get used to living in the conditions they're in. And everyone is, the majority of the masses across the globe, because of capitalism, are struggling to survive. So yeah, when you have candy thrown at you, of course you're going to take it. And of course you're going to, like, also, like, the hope, right? The hope of survival, the gratefulness of being able to survive, and
Mm.
the hope of the child living, even when, the father is gruesomely splattered to death.
Yeah.
The effects are stupendous, by the way. Like in the 80s,
Oh, I know.
I
Yeah.
see movies, right? American movies with huge budgets that have special effects, and I giggle because I'm like, that is so bad. Like, how do we
Yeah, you
get
could tell it
scared of
was
that horror film?
yeah. Yeah, you could tell it's just, done on a computer. Not that I mean that
Yeah,
can look good sometimes, but sometimes it just looks like a video game.
yeah,
And yeah, I would love to
yeah.
know how they did that. The only thing that I'm still sort of wrestling with is Claudia Cardinale's character.
Mhm.
I just felt like we needed more of her because she's this princess. It's not clear whether she's married to Mastroianni or if it's a girlfriend or something. And then later on in the film, when the Vesuvius erupts, which that really happened around that
Mm.
time, she goes off alone, and then she meets this young, he looked like a teenager, and sleeps with him. And then we never see her again after that. And I've read some people felt that, that was her chance. It was only during a crisis to have some sort of independence over herself, sexual independence. But I just thought, well, but if she's with Mastroianni, it didn't seem like that was a bad marriage or a bad relationship, or he was, I can understand if she needed to get away from him, but we didn't see any of that. I mean, was she just going
Mhm.
insane at that moment? I don't know. What did you think of that part
I
of the
think it's
film?
all of the, I think you hit it with all of it. Yeah, one, there's never enough Cardinale.
Oh yeah, I love her. Yeah, I
We always
know.
need more of her.
Yeah.
Um, Even when she's the star of the film, like just keep her on all the time.
Oh yeah.
Did you know this fact that her voice was dubbed because she had a voice that was, I think, kind of maybe similar to mine, raspy and deep and not quote unquote
Oh
feminine.
wow.
So
Wow.
she was dubbed, yeah.
In this film
Um,
only, or you mean like in
no, in
general?
general, I don't know if they
Wow.
stopped or when they stopped, if they did, but at least at the beginning of her
Oh, I didn't
career,
know that.
yeah. But maybe they stopped. I haven't looked into that, but this was something that I stuck with me a long time ago. But the character, yeah, it's really, she's almost like not a token, but just kind of like a little, like maybe bullet point. But I want to tell you a lot of things. One, if you'd been to Italy, you would know. It's kind of almost, I don't know, maybe people will have in the comments people hating me for saying this, but it's almost part of Italian culture, patriarchal culture, right? That there's the wife, the lover, and then women that he sleeps with.
Mm,
So that's one of the reasons why I said that Malaparte has a very complex character, because while he sees, right, while he went from fascist to an ally of
yeah.
the allies,
Yeah.
he's not left wing. He he's complex, but he also is the typical Italian male.
Right.
No, so I don't think she is his wife. I think
I don't
she's
think so.
his lover, right? But
Yeah.
she I'm sure she knows that he's a philanderer, right? He also tries to seduce Wyatt.
Yes,
I mean, and
they have a
really,
real flirtation,
yeah,
and yeah, he does. That's true. Yeah.
in a very, very forward way, which I was not shocked because it's very Italian.
Right.
You get, as a woman in Italy, you get propositioned during work interviews.
Mm,
So it's
odd.
like, I mean, it happens here too, but it happens here too. It happens all over the world.
Mm,
But there's a lot happening in that scene with her when she descends from her princess, from her kingdom. I think there's a lot. I think there's that Italian sensuality that I brought up earlier. I think it is the independence. I think it is the devastation of war,
right.
and in both senses, right? One, the devastation of someone from a higher class being in this, right? They
Right.
never expect to they never expect to be exposed to any kind of destruction, right? As a woman too. And then also the class system, right? She can exploit the younger man because
Right.
he's poor. So,
Yeah.
damn, she's beautiful. Like, who
Oh,
would
I
review?
know.
Don't say. But but I think it's all of that Italian sensuality, also like the comfort of human contact, right? She's not going to fall in love with. There's a lot here, and I think there's a lot of ways to interpret it.
Yeah, I
But for
think
me,
so.
it was
Yeah.
all of that, right? All of the things that we've been talking about.
Hmm.
So the class system, the falling, the descent, into the bowels of Naples in the class system,
Right.
and that sensuality. There is a really carnal, being Southern Italian is a very carnal thing, and it's just it's beautiful, and but it's a patriarchal country too. I
Right.
mean, the home of the Pope. So So women too, yeah, I agree with you that part of it is also that seeking independence or
Yeah.
liberation, right?
Yeah,
So,
I really actually can't even take credit for that take because I'd actually you would probably even like it. Really good research I found. It's a dissertation that this student wrote. Her name is Francesca Rivolo.
uh-huh.
It's called American Soldiers and Italian Women, the Sexual Economy of Occupied Naples. So she writes about all that time, and then she writes about the skin, the book, and the film. And she said that about this is her chance sort of for
Wow.
independence. But she also talks about the book called The Gallery by John Horn Burns, which is also about this time and how, I don't know the exact story, but it's not necessarily a similar story, but similar themes about how America's they're portrayed in the media as being these saviors, but that and he was an American soldier GI, and that's not actually he's in a fictional story like the Malaparte book and film. He makes it fictional and it tackles similar things. But apparently, that book though was praised when it came out, and for some reason, people just sort of overlooked that he was criticizing America. But when Malaparte's book came out, it was like I said, Vatican banned it. It was really, really controversial, and even the film. I mean, it was meant. I don't know if this is true. I heard this on another podcast. It was, and I couldn't find anything about it, but they were meant to do the English dubbing of it, and they never even did it. Because as we can see with like Lancaster, for example, he was
Mhm.
dubbed by someone Italian, and so they were going to do another one for American audiences, and they never even did it.
Mhm.
So that's
Wow.
largely why a lot of people it just kind
Wow.
of was very controversial, and it just kind of came and went. There is a Blu-ray of it now, but it's a shame because it's really not discussed. It's really not discussed all that much. um I'm trying to see what else I wanted to mention. Oh yeah, of course, why we touched on Lancaster, but his
Mhm.
character as General Mark Clark. I mean, again, here's this general, and he's there purely because he wants great press. He wants to be this hero,
Mhm.
and I actually I like that you brought up that when he meets that gangster, Italian gangster who has all these German soldiers, he's trying to buy them from him in order to
Mhm.
look like, oh, like, for the in the press, look at all these Germans we caught, but it was actually caught
Yeah.
by the Sicilian mob. Um
Who's
and
trying to
yeah,
fatten them because they sell them by the lira.
yes, yes, yes. Which again was sort of darkly
On
funny that
theme.
at first I thought, why is he trying to get all these guys fat? And it was a way get more money. Like, oh, look at all this.
Mhm.
We look
Yeah.
how fat they are. I got to cook for them and spend all this money. And they're negotiating. And actually, I overlooked the fact that he clearly was intentionally mispronouncing his name. So I'm glad that you brought that
Mhm.
up because he keeps
Yeah.
mispronouncing it clearly intentionally,
Mhm.
and even he's jealous even of Deborah when she comes because, oh, now she's gonna get more press than me. I'm like, what are
Yeah.
you there for?
Mhm.
He wouldn't
Exactly.
help the Moroccan soldiers for all the STDs that were going around. We
Mhm.
see that he won't help with it. Um, and
And
and he's just totally in it for himself. And that was that other thing, just like we don't know if the fish was a human or not.
mhm. Mhm.
That joke that the gangster makes when he's like, okay, if you're not going to pay what we want, we'll just turn them into soap. And we don't know if that's a joke or not. And then even
Exactly.
even
But that's like
even
it's so
Maleparte's like, yeah, no, he's serious.
yeah. And then he says everybody needs soap. And
Right.
this is the genius of this film, right? Because it always all of these kind of grotesque and over the top things,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Are well, the Nazis also didn't they make soap from human flesh?
I'm
From
not sure,
human
but I wouldn't
fat?
be
I think
surprised.
they did. Maybe, I don't quote me on that. I think, but and he says something like, I have it here. Um, yeah, 200 lira per person, which Mark doesn't agree to. And then he said, well, it's 200 lira per kilo of soap. And Matsulo says, fat is fat.
Right.
right?
right.
Always going back to the value, la pelle, the skin, the
Ah, good
value of
point.
human flesh. Then Malaparte says soap is 200 lira per kilo, and God knows the Neapolitans need it, right? It's all there's and even in that line, there's so much. It encompasses so much about what the Neapolitans have been through and what they're put through,
Mm,
right?
mm,
How they're viewed. So there's so much here. It's a
yeah.
genius. It's, and I don't use this word lightly. It's a genius film. The way it was written is just, and I don't know how much. I wish I had read the book to see how much of it. Have you read it?
Well, I haven't, but I would like to. But from this dissertation by Francesca Rivolo, uh, I think it's fairly faithful to the book, but Cavani pushes pushes the narrative more towards the how women are exploited and taken advantage of, whereas that's in the book as well, but it's a little broader. But from what I've read of the book, it's pretty close. But yeah, I mean, Malaparte, like we said, he was there, and this drove him insane that the Napolitanos were portrayed in the media as just basically like, oh, this is their fault and they're criminals and they're actually, there's a little screenshot that I took in the dissertation. Like these were the kind of, I don't know, hopefully that will show. These are the kind of like ads they were putting: men who
Oh,
know, say no to prostitutes, spreaders of
oh my,
syphilis and gonorrhea.
oh
Um,
my God.
yeah, so this was
It
in the,
goes back to the Madonna
yeah, she
Whore.
even has some of
Yeah.
the ads that
Yeah.
were, sorry, so it's a little blurry, but I'll have to
Wow.
take a screenshot
Interesting.
and then, oh, there we go.
Yeah.
It's a little better.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was, it
Oh,
drove him insane because the media were saying
wow.
that they were these saviors, and also what the media could say, they were limited to
Hmm.
what they could say.
Yeah.
And the character that Lancaster plays, he apparently he was the one, Burns was his name. He was the one who could regulate. He was in charge of regulating the information coming out of Italy.
Wow.
So what people knew, this is always what happens in history. It's like, then years later
Mhm.
we get less of the propaganda. We get, stories from soldiers who were there, memoirs, books, interviews. We could only get that in hindsight often. And that's really what this book is, even though it's a fiction, it's sort of based on a lot of, as you know, on a lot of truths.
Yeah.
But it's it's really fantastic. I think I like it even more after discussing it now with you, because some of those things that I either didn't quite understand, or maybe didn't, or maybe saw in a slightly different way. I really liked a lot of your interpretations on it. Was there anything else you wanted to say?
Okay.
I know you had
We
a
could
lot
talk
of.
for like 4 more hours. I mean, it's just, and I was like, at a certain point, I was like, stop writing notes. I was like, how you do, pause it to write something down.
Right, right.
There's so much. We didn't touch upon, we mentioned the merkin, right, which is is a pubic wig, and
Oh, yeah.
how there's someone who actually makes
Yeah, the
blonde
blonde
ones
wigs. Sorry, blonde pubic
for
wigs.
the, yeah, so that for the soldiers to be able to put
Yeah,
on the dark hair,
yeah, because they thought that
Neapolitan
black
women.
men only like blonde women, which again is just
Yeah, for the white one
racist.
and then the blonde.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then also the black soldiers could be killed, right? Black men have been killed for whistling at white women, which happened to Emmett Till, a 13-year-old boy, right?
Mm,
So back home, the black soldiers could be killed for being with a white blonde woman, but here in Italy, you can buy one.
right.
So
Ah,
always
good
this
point.
kind
Yeah.
of, and then also the Southern Italian women are not real blondes, so they have to fit into the white narrative, the fantasy, right? So
Right.
there's not even themselves who are being sold; they have to be something else. It's just all of these layers of things.
Yeah.
Then Malaparte says to Ren, "If Americans had lost the war, do you think the women of New York would be this creative?"
Mm.
And Jimmy Wren says, there wouldn't be any need. In New York, we have enough blondes for everyone,
Ah, God. That's a
right?
good, yeah.
So he misses the point.
Right.
He misses the points, and then it reveals a truth
Right.
that you know, that women, they're there for the taking.
Right.
Whether you're raping them or dating them, they're there.
Yeah.
They're there for the taking, and they're not humans anymore. Let's see. Oh, then also we mentioned the selling of children to the sex trade, how Wyatt, her pure American eyes are shocked. But then the Goumier, the Moroccan Goumier, also cuts a lock of her blonde hair.
Oh, right,
So
right.
all these things happening in this film. It's amazing. Maria Concetta, Jimmy, right? Ren brings a prosciutto to Maria Concetta to bring to her
Oh, yes,
father
yes.
to show that he's honorable in his intentions, and she can't accept it because her dad will then think that she's a whore. But
Right.
then Jimmy, he goes and brings it to the
With that
prostitute,
woman, yeah.
and she's moaning, complimenting her butt. She's not really complimenting him. She's staring at the prosciutto on the bed, salivating,
Yeah.
really moaning and talking to the piece of meat. That's
Yes.
flesh.
Yes.
It's all these kind of, I love these layers of how, how they bring about Cavani and Breillat, Malaparte in writing the book, and then whatever steps, I'll stop gesticulating, whatever steps Cavani and Breillat brought into this to bring to the fore all of these layers of the value of flesh. It's just
yeah.
So much.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like any great work of art, every time you see it, you'll see something new.
So much.
So
So
I'm certainly going to revisit it again, but yeah, more people
right.
should see it because it's not discussed very much, but it's a really, 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 really good film.
Thanks so much for the opportunity to see it.
Yeah,
Because
no, my pleasure. My pleasure. Can you tell us a little bit about your show and anything else you're working on right now?
yes, thank you, gladly. But I just want to say we should both read the book.
Yes, yes. Yeah, I'm going
and
to read the
then
book.
watch the film again.
Yeah.
And I hope you'll invite me back and we can discuss it more in depth based on our reading of the book.
Yeah, good idea. Good idea.
Maybe we can find the script somewhere in that
Yeah.
time, and we'll see. And then we can have the actress who played Wyatt. Maybe you can invite her to
that's a good idea. Yeah, that's a good
join
idea.
in. It would be amazing to hear from her.
Yeah.
So thank you for inviting me. So my website where people can watch my films, my first film, I started as an actress and then I expanded from in front of the camera to behind to make films in Calabria, where my parents are from. So my first film is coming on its 20th anniversary.
Oh, wow.
People can see it so I'll have more on that as the year progresses. People can watch it. You can order DVDs, which that film comes together. It's The Cost of Bread and Ode to Hipponion, which is based on a poem, or it's inspired by a poem. Those two short films come together on one DVD, but you can screen 3 of my films, those 2 and my documentary Earth, Dream Earth, which is about Italian immigrants and their gardens here in New York. It's a really profound, but this what my interviewees gave of all ages is just it's a treasure. And some of it talking about the effects of World War II from inside Italy. So if people are interested in watching those, they're streamed on calabrisellafilms.com. And yes, Lucia's Vegan Lifestyle is the only vegan show on television, actual television. It's on cable here in New York City on MNN Lifestyle Channel and BronxNet Inform. Both of those networks have simultaneous streaming, but people can also watch on the YouTube channel, which is Lucia's Vegan Lifestyle, all attached, no apostrophe S. And I ask people to subscribe, even if they're watching on TV, because it helps, right? It helps us, it helps our work when
Right.
people actually subscribe to our channel. So people should subscribe to your channel now. And if they go watch Lucia's Vegan Lifestyle, which, you know, talks about various topics from the aspect of veganism. So, you know, animal agriculture, human health, climate, the environment, racism, environmental racism. You know, I have women's themes in there, LGBTQIA, everything. So I hope people will find it interesting, and I hope they'll subscribe. And what else? And then, you know, as a quote unquote influencer for vegan lifestyle, that's on all my social media, Lucia Vegan Lifestyle. So, you know, beauty and cruelty-free products to recipes, a lot of them Italian and Southern Italian, because people ask me for those. And then, of course, they can follow my actor, filmmaker, activist social media, which is on Instagram. It's Lucia Grillo _Calabrizella Films.
Great. Fantastic. Well, I'll leave all those links in the description box below for where you can follow Lucia on social media and subscribe to her YouTube channel and check out her website and get her films and everything else. So, Lucia, thanks again. This was such a great chat, and come again. Let's do it again sometime down the road.
Thanks so much, Robert. My pleasure.
Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. I want to thank all of my members on Patreon. If you're interested in becoming a member of my Patreon, head over to the link, patreon.com/Robert Bellissimo at the movies for full details. Patreon is exclusive content that I create month in and month out. And as a subscriber, you are able to vote on polls and contribute to what I do on Patreon month in and month out. So head over to the link for full details. You can also leave a donation directly to my YouTube channel by pressing the thanks link, which you will find directly below the video frame. Just click on the thanks link and you can leave a donation there if you choose to. And lastly, if this is your first time here, please consider subscribing. It is absolutely free to do so by pressing the Robert Bellissimo at the movies logo. You will see it floating above my head in the top left corner to your top left. In just a second, just click on that and then click the bell in order to get a notification every time I release one of my new episodes. Also click the like button and leave a comment below. Let me know what you think of this episode. Also, you can also share the episode. All of these things are what produce traction to my YouTube channel. So I appreciate you watching and thank you again. And I will see you in the next episode.